Reviews cover the unboxing. They don't cover the Tuesday night 18 months later when your wheelbase won't turn on. So here are the 5 things why owning Moza sucks, starting from the worst. Take a moment to like and subscribe if you want more of this kind of breakdown. Then let's get into it. Number 1, and it's the big one, the software. Here's the pattern that shows up everywhere once you start looking. The hardware is excellent, and almost every problem people have is software. A sim racing site that runs an R21 Ultra put it exactly that way. The hardware is superb, and the faults that turn up are almost all software, and they cluster tightly. Pithouse won't open. The base drops into boot mode after a firmware update. The pedals go dead. The base overheats and loses force feedback. The wheel shakes side to side at rest, and the important detail is that those problems are model agnostic. R3, R5, R9, R12, R16, R21, all of them, because they all share Pithouse and the same connection design. So this isn't one bad product, it's a software layer that every Moza owner is standing on. The firmware updates are the specific pressure point. A large share of the not detected and stuck in boot mode cases come from an online firmware update dropping connection partway through the flash, which means a routine update can leave your base unusable until you work out how to recover it. And the fix people end up using tells you a lot. Owners rolling firmware backwards. One driver on Assetto Corsa Evo had to manually downgrade his R5 base to an older version before the wheel would work properly at all. Another owner put it more bluntly than I would, saying he keeps having to roll back firmware because Pithouse randomly decides when it feels like detecting his wheel and pedals. Rolling back firmware to make your $500 wheelbase work is not a thing you should have to know how to do. If you own 2 things genuinely help here. Update firmware offline rather than through the online updater, because the connection dropping mid-flash is what causes most of the bricking. And if Pithouse suddenly stops detecting your hardware, check the Windows Game Input Service before you panic, because that's a common culprit and it isn't Moza's fault at all. Neither of those is obvious. Neither is in the box. Number 2, game compatibility, which is the thing nobody warns you about. Moza is a young brand, and game developers have spent 20 years building support for Logitech, Rustmaster, and Fanatec. That gap shows up constantly. In the Crew Motorfest, owners report Moza simply isn't supported. One R5 owner couldn't get the game to map steering at all, only registering input in one direction. Another reported the pedals behaving as though there's a 50% dead zone, regardless of what he said in software. Assetto Corsa Evo, R5 owners unable to map paddles, wheels sticking off center during normal driving. Automobilista 2 and R12 not being recognized, and the steer left and steer right inputs registering simultaneously so no configuration would apply. CarX Street R16 owners with no force feedback at all. F124 and R9 disconnecting mid-session, inputs dropping out after 30 to 60 seconds on track. And my favorite, Forza Motorsport, where an R9 owner found the force feedback had weakened dramatically. The workaround offered by another owner was to power cycle the base repeatedly while sitting in a car until resistance came back. His words were, "Welcome to a growing list of Moza wheel users who have this issue." And there's a bigger version of the same problem. Moza is effectively a PC brand. There are Xbox variants at the entry end, but no PlayStation support at all, and PlayStation is where most console racers actually are. That's changing. They've just partnered with Gran Turismo, and they're working toward licensed PlayStation hardware, but that's intent. Not a product you can buy today. None of that is Moza's fault exactly. Developers choose what to support, and Sony's licensing is Sony's, but it is your problem when you buy one. The mitigation is boring and effective. Before you spend anything, search the exact sim you play plus Moza, and read the last few months of forum posts. 5 minutes of that will tell you more than any review will, including this one. Number 3, what happens when something goes wrong? There's a documented case from this year that's worth walking through, because it's specific rather than vague grumbling. An owner sent in a faulty R9 V3 base and steering wheel. He got them back in May, plugged everything in, and the exact same fault was still there. His conclusion was that the product had either not been properly repaired, not properly tested, or not properly inspected before being sent back to him. Hard to argue with that. After more back and forth, Moza agreed to send a brand new R9 V3. He described the whole process as frustrating, unclear, and far too slow, with inconsistent communication, and said he had to keep chasing for updates himself. Earlier promises about replacing both the base and the wheel changed along the way. The replacement base arrived in June, without the steering wheel. Now, one case is one case, but it's the kind of case that makes you nervous about a company scaling as fast as this one is. And support is exactly the thing that gets stretched thinnest when a brand grows quickly. Number 4 is the one that costs you money quietly, and almost nobody factors it in when they buy. Moza releases products extremely fast. The R9 became the R9 V3. The R16 became the the R16 Ultra. The R5 became the R5 Pro. The R12 became the R12 V2. That cadence is genuinely good for the market. It's a big part of why prices keep falling. It's terrible for you if you own the old one, because used Moza gear sells at noticeably steeper discounts than the competition, and the reason is almost flattering. New Moza equipment keeps getting cheaper and better, so used Moza equipment has to be cheaper still to move. Fanatec holds its value clearly better, partly because they release far less often. If you're the kind of person who upgrades every year or two and sells the old kit on, that gap is real money out of your pocket, and it isn't on any spec sheet. There is a way to play this though. Buy just after a refresh, not just before one. If a base has recently been superseded, you're at the start of its depreciation curve rather than the end, and the outgoing model often gets discounted hard while stock clears. The people who lose most are the ones who buy a 2-year-old model at close to full price a month before its replacement lands. And number 5, the one enthusiast will already be shouting about. At the top end, Moza isn't the best feeling hardware you can buy. Comparison after comparison puts Simagic and Asetek ahead on force feedback quality at equivalent torque, and there's a reason for it that isn't just marketing. Pithouse doesn't simply pass the game signal through to you. It adds an interpretive layer on top, amplifying detail. In a sim with a thin base signal that's laddering, the wheel feels alive and impressive. In iRacing, which already sends dense detailed information, that same amplification reads as busy rather than clear. The well-known community fix is pulling road sensitivity down to around 9 and letting the sim do the work. That's a design philosophy rather than a defect, and for most people, it's the right call. Moza tuned for immediate impressiveness, and it works. But if what you want is raw transparency, the signal exactly as the game sent it, this is not the brand that gives it to you. And be honest with yourself about whether that applies. If you're not driving at the limit, the difference between an amplified signal and a transparent one is largely academic, because you're not reading the subtle stuff anyway. This matters if you're already fast, and the hardware is the thing capping you. If you're still finding pace in your own consistency, it isn't. Moza builds excellent hardware. Nobody serious disputes that, including the people complaining hardest. The motors are good. The build quality is good. The prices are absurd in your favor. Everything wrapped around that hardware is playing catch up. The software that runs it, the support that fixes it, the compatibility that lets games talk to it, the release schedule that torches your resale value. They went from a camera gimbal company to 80 countries in 4 years, and you can feel exactly where the seams are. Buy Moza knowing that. Not because it's a bad choice, it usually isn't, but because the spec sheet is the easy part and nobody sells you the rest of it. Take a moment to like and subscribe if you want more of this kind of breakdown.